This is how easy it is to start creating your first user accounts, manage their passwords and change the configuration for the passwords like the password validity, expiration date and how much the password will stay active for and what happens with the accounts after that. Thank you for joining Unicast-Administrators. I hope you will enjoy what comes next and stay tuned for what will come after this video as well. This is how easy it is to create and manage user accounts in Linux, and here is how you can start doing that just now. Today we are going to discuss about user account management and group management, and mainly how we can create user accounts and how we can add them in specific groups and control those groups as well. And because our server has been installed with a graphical user interface, you have two ways of creating the users. First would be from your settings or from show applications. You go on settings and here you go below on users, and from here you just click on unlock. You add the password that you have set for your user account and you can create user accounts from here. For example, you see that Johnny is the user that we have created when we have installed our server for the first time, and I just created a separate account called Andrew, but this one has not been set at all, so there is no password. As you can see here on the password field, it's telling us that the account is disabled. So we could create users and manage existing users from here directly from the graphical user interface, but we are not going to do that. We are actually going to focus on creating users from the terminal, because since we want to start your Linux career, I don't see a reason why we should do it from the graphical user interface. Of course, you can do it from there, but on this video we are going to focus on how to create user accounts from the terminal. So in order to create users from the terminal, we use a command called user add, and this command allows us to create new users as long as we are logged on as root on our terminal. So in order to make sure that you can proceed with this exercise, if I exit now, for example, I'm logged on as Johnny, so from Johnny let's use the command su root, and here let's type in the password for the root account, and now as soon as I do who am I, as you can see I'm connected as root. Let's also change directory to the home directory of root. So we are going to discuss about creating user accounts using the user add command. But before we do that, let's have a quick look at the command itself using the manual page for the command user add. So let's go with man user add, and right here as you can see we have all the options that user add is used for, and I'm just gonna give you two quick highlights. So one argument is -c or -- comment, which adds a comment to the user account. -g it's to set up a different GID, which stands for group identifier, but we are not going to use that because we are going to allow it to set it up automatically. And another option is -m to create home directories. Now on most distributions this is created automatically. So for example, if I do an ls-l on home, you see that I have two user created and two home directories created for the user accounts. So if I would want to create a third user, and let's say that we want our user to be called John, I can just use user add and just type in John, and as soon as I do that, if I list again on home, you see that the home directory for the user John has been created already. Now this is something that not all of the distributions in Linux have, which is behind we have a alias that will automatically run the -m command as part of the user account management. But there is also one particular file called login.defs, which is this one. So inside this file there is a specific parameter that will tell you that this is going to automatically create the home directory of the user that you want to create as well. We will have a look at this file as well later on, but for the moment let's presume that we want to create a user and we want to give it a home directory as well. So I recommend you to make a habit out of using the -m argument, which stands for creating home directory, even if in my case it created it automatically. Depending on the distribution that you are working on, this might not happen automatically. So make sure that you add user add -m as well. Let's give it the name, I don't know, let's call it Matthew. And let's also add -c for comment. And in quotes, let's add a description of what this account is. So let's say that Matthew, it's an HR recruiter. I think that's good enough. And if we list again on home, we have Matthew again. Now, this is not the way that you actually check if you have accounts created or not, or what is the list of your user accounts. I just listed the home directory, but you might have users created without a home directory. So now we can discuss about the actual location from where you can check the users created, and that is etc passwd. Now etc passwd stands for password, but it's not the actual file that contains the passwords for the user accounts. It's just a local database that records the users that you have and different parameters that are applied to them. So as soon as I will look into this file, you will see that I have an entry for each and every single user that we have created. And actually, let me pipe this and show only the last part. So here we have Johnny, Andrew, and John, and also Matthew. And let's discuss a bit about what everything here means. And in order to make it even easier, let's add tail -n4 so that we can focus only on our users. So let's start with Johnny, which is the user that we have created for the first time when we have actually installed our server. So the first column, it's the name, the username of the user. In our case, it's Johnny. And then what follows after column, it's an X, which stands for password. Basically, this means that a password is set and encrypted for this user account. And then immediately after that, we have 1000, which is the user ID. And user ID, it's the identificator for this user account. And everything starts from 1000. And we will have a look at this as well later on. This is part of the etc login.defs file, but this number represents the user ID for the user Johnny. The next one, 1000, it's for the JID, which is the group identificator. And then here we have the comment as well. So for example, we can compare the comment with what we have below. User Andrew does not have any comments here. We only have 2 colon sign symbols, but everything is empty between them. Same goes for John. But Matthew actually has a comment, and we explicitly said that Matthew, it's an HR recruiter. And for Johnny, we just gave him the comment Johnny to identify him as just Johnny. The next part, it's the location of their home directory. So we can see that for Johnny, it's inside home Johnny. For Andrew, it's inside home Andrew. For John as well. And for Matthew, it's inside home as well. So for Andrew and for John, I did not create manually their home directory. It was created automatically. Johnny was automatically created when we have when we installed our server for the first time. And Matthew has a home directory, but we explicitly said that with the -m command. So if I want to create, let's say, another user, let's call it let's say Andrea, and let's add -m again for home directory and -c, and let's say that we want to create Andrea as, and give her a comment of HR chief. I don't know, let's leave it as it is, right? And as soon as I cut again, here we go, we have Andrea. It was created, we gave her the comment HR chief, and we gave her a home directory as well. Two things that I did not discuss yet are that for user ID, for UID and JID, for group ID, you see that for normal user account everything starts from 1000 onwards, and I think it goes up until 60,000 or something like that. So because Johnny was the first user created, he has the user ID and group ID 1000. Andrew, because was the second one created, has the user ID and the group ID 1001 and 1001 for group ID as well, and so on. So John has 1002, Matthew 1003, Andrea 1004. Everything that it's below 1000, it's mainly used for admin accounts. Root, for example, if we cut etc password and let's say that we want to pipe for root, you see that root has 0, and operator, which is used by one of the applications inside Linux, has the user ID 11 and the group ID 0. Root has user ID 0 and group ID 0. So everything below 1000 it's reserved, and at least it's recommended as part of a best practice guide to allow your users to have UIDs and JIDs above 1000, because everything below 1000 are for administrative accounts. And the last part from etc password file, it's what we have on the last line at the end of the lines, which is bin bash, which basically represents our terminal. So the terminal that we are currently logged on, it's a shell, and in our case it's bin bash. So for example, root, it's allowed to log in. Operator user account has sbin no login, so that means that I will never be able to log in as operator, never. But Johnny has been bashed, so he's able to log in. Andrew the same, and same goes for John, Matthew and Andrea. So this is what this means. Basically this is just a label that it's set inside this file, and whenever this user account would try to log in on this server, he will be restricted because he has this sbin no login file. So etc passwd, it's just a file that it's, think of it like some sort of local database that records the profiles and the accounts that you have there. And if you want to see the actual file that stores the passwords, well, that is etc shadow. And if I cut this file, you will see that I'll have an output for each and every single user account. But in order to be easy to understand, let's just focus on the last 5 entries. So I'm going to cut again the etc shadow file, and this time I'm going to put a tail -n5. And we are going to focus only on the accounts that we have created ourselves. And for example, you will see that Johnny, it's the first one that appears because it was the first user that we created. But you will also see that Johnny has this long string here of random characters, and basically this is the password that was set for Johnny, but it's ciphered, it's encrypted, so you cannot really read this. But this $6 represents the fact that this is the column for the password field, and everything that follows after that, it's the password itself, but in a encrypted manner. And we see that for Andrew, for John, for Matthew and for Andrea, we have 2 exclamation marks. And basically this means that a password has not been set for these accounts. They are created, but the password was not set, therefore they cannot log in. And in order to be easy to understand this, let's have a quick look at the graph that I added here on Excalibur. So on Excalibur I made a quick graph here, quick representation of what this represents. So basically the first line where we have the user Johnny, this represents the login name, and the second field from here with the red, everything that starts after $6 again, it's the actual password encrypted. So here is the encrypted password. And for example, if we go back to our server, you see that we have here this line 19,844. This actually represents days since the last password change. Now you might wonder why we have this number. Well, it's because since we have set the password for the user Johnny when we have created our account, it's actually taking the first day ever when Linux was created, which I think it was somewhere around 70s something. So that's why we have this number. As soon as we will change the password, which I'm going to do immediately, you will see that this will change to our date. Another field would be minimum password age, which represents the time that you are allowed to use this password. And after that, if for example you have a value of 1 here on this column, which represents the minimum password age, you will need to change your password after that. The next column, this stands for password inactivity period, and basically this represents the fact that if you don't change your password and your password expire, your account is allowed to stay for 9,999 days inactive, but it won't be completely disabled. And the last part where we have this 7, this is actually password change warning period. So basically it represents the time in days of how long you will be receiving warnings that your password will expire. So let's say that my password is going to expire in the next 7 days starting from today. Well, from today for the next 7 days I'm gonna keep getting a warning that the password is going to expire and I will need to change it. And this is what we see here. This is this 7, for example, and we can change these values. We will discuss about this a bit later on. And at the end we have these colon symbols which don't have anything inside them. Well, the first one, actually both of them are reserved for future use. We don't know exactly what this will represent in the future, but we just know that they are reserved for the future. And basically this is etc shadow in short. So basically etc shadow, it's the file that stores the passwords for the user accounts and the information about the expiration date for the password in question. But you cannot read the password because the password is encrypted. Next, let's talk about how you can actually change the password for a user. So for example, if I would like to set a password for user Andrea or Matthew, in order to do that, you will use, let me use this again so we can have a quick look at how this will change. So I can change the password for a user account using the command passwd, and I'll give it the name of the user account, so in our case Andrea, and as soon as I do that it will ask me to set up a new password for Andrea. So let's set up a password here. Oh, I did not match the passwords, my bad, 1 second. There we go. So as soon as we change the password, it will tell me all authentication tokens updated successfully. So we have successfully changed the password for the user account Andrea. Now let's have a quick look again at how Andrea looks. So above we see that we had 2 exclamation marks stating that the account is inactive and it does not have a password set up. Now, as soon as we set up a password for Andrea, we are prompted with this, similar to how it looks for Johnny. So you see, immediately after the user account, after columns, we have a $6 beginning that represents this is a password, and everything that follows after that, it's an encrypted password. It's the password that we set in encrypted. So in that case, let's test this out. Can we SSH? Oh, my bad, I got the wrong server. 1 second. So let's go for server 6, Rocky Linux, and let's log in as Andrea. As soon as I do that, I enter the password, and there we go. Who am I? I am Andrea. So now I can SSH. If I would like to do that as, let's say, Matthew, nothing happens because Matthew does not have a password set up yet. His account is inactive, therefore the access is denied. If I want to change that, so let's say that I want to change that for Matthew as well, let's do like this. So passwd, let's change the password for Matthew. Let's put the password here for him as well, and there we go. Now Matthew will be able to log in as well. So as user Matthew, there we go. I am able to log in now as Matthew. And this is what passwd does. It allows you to change the password. Now we can have a quick look at all the parameters that we have for the command passwd. And for example, we have an option to lock accounts. We also have an option to unlock accounts or delete accounts or set expirations and many more. And let's check the status. So we have here -S or -- status. And let's do a passwd status. So I'll do first one with -- status, and let's say that I'm going to do it on Johnny. That's one. And another time, and a second time, I'll run it with the abbreviation parameter. So passwd -S, and let's do it for Andrew. So passwd -- status and passwd -S do the same thing. And here you can check the details about the account. So for example, you see that for Johnny, password set means that a password it's set up and it's encrypted with the cipher SHA 512, and we can see that for user Andrew, the account it's locked, and we can also see that here with LK in capital. That stands for locked, while for Johnny we have PS in capital, and basically that means that it's the password is set and we don't need to do anything for this. There is another way that you can also control the password. So for example, if I would like to change, let's say that I don't want the password for Johnny to be active for so long. I don't want it to be active for 9,999 days. Well, we can use chage, and if I use -L, for example, on Johnny, it will tell me exactly the details that are currently set up. So for example, we see that the last password change was on 1st of May 2024. That's when we first set the password, changed the password for Johnny. The password expires never, password inactive never, and the account expires never. So basically this means that the account will never expire and the password will never expire. Also, we can see minimum number of days between password change. So this is a restriction that, for example, if I change the value here and I set 1 or 2, if I change the password for Andrew, for Johnny now, and as Johnny, if I try to change the password for myself, I'm not going to be able to do that for 2 days. I don't want to do that, so this will remain on 0. And this is the maximum number of days between password change. So basically that means that I have to wait for this long in order to be able to change the password after that, and number of days of warning before password expires. So basically this means that I'm gonna be prompted for 7 days continuously that the password will expire, and I have to change it. So let's change the password for Johnny. So in order to do that, you just type in the command chage, give the name of the user, in our case Johnny. So let's enter the value of the minimum password age, and in that case I'll leave it like that. Maximum password age, let's say that we want to force this to stay for 90 days. And last password change will be today, so I'm just gonna hit enter here. Password expiration warning, let's say that I want to be prompted with 4 days before my password expires, not 7. And active, I'm not gonna do anything here, just gonna leave it like that. Account expiration date, let's say that maybe we want this on 2024 07/19. Let's see what this does. And as soon as I do again chage minus L Johnny, we see that now our values have been replied. That's one way of setting up the period of time for the passwords to expire or to be valid for. And this is what chage does. Of course, chage has a lot of parameters, but at least I have never used so many of them. I only just used chage to list, and I just had to set up for specific individual accounts the validity as well. Now we need to talk about 2 locations when it comes to user account management. So for example, if I list on skel, we will see that these files are automatically copied when a user account is created. So this is what skel stands for. It's a location inside Linux that it's used by the user add command, and whenever an account is created, it will automatically add this to the users that were created. So for example, if I do an ls-la on home, and let's say that we want to pick Andrea, we will see that exactly these files have been created and copied to her account as well. So if I go in skel, and here let's say that I want to touch to create a new file. Let's say that we want to add actually multiple files, so let's add new files from 1 to 5. And if we list again, we see that we have the old files that were already there and my files, and you'll see that these are not going to be copied over to the user Andrea, because Andrea was already created before we added files to skel location. So let's clear our screen again. In skel, let's do an ls-la, and we'll see that these files are created as well. Let me go ahead and create a new user, and let's name it Kyle. And if we list the contents of the user Kyle, you will see that now, aside from the files that were originally here and then I added these files, these have all been copied over to the user home Kyle directory. And if I want to test that on home Andrea, you'll see that, oh my bad, there we go, Andrea does not have these files. If I do the same for, let's say, Matthew, nothing. So skel, it's a way of making sure that if new users should have specific files already copied over in their home directories, you can place that file in skel, and once you create that account, these files that you created new will be copied over. Now you have to remember that this applies only to new accounts. If you make changes in skel after accounts have already been created, those files or those changes will not be replicated automatically to the directory of those users. And another important file which is vital when it comes to user account management, it's login.defs. And this file, if we actually, let's just go inside it with Vim. So basically this files contains specific settings and parameters that apply to user accounts when they are created. And if we have a look in it, we'll see that, for example, if I go for password, we see that there are different things. So for example, umask, we will discuss about this later on when it comes to advanced permissions, but this is a way of making sure that specific permissions are applied to the files and directories of user accounts when they are created. Home mode, it's the same. So for example, we have a description here. If home mode is not set, the value of umask is used to create the mode. This again stands for permissions. 7 stands for read, write, execute permissions, but we'll discuss about this later on. One thing that we will focus here, you will see that we have, for example, for passwords, we have these values here, and you may remember that when we first looked inside passwd and when we checked with chage -l, we had the exact same values. So password maximum days, we have a description here, maximum number of days for a password that may be used. We had this value 99,999, password minimum days 0 and 7. You can control this automatically from here. So let's say that I want the password to be valid for a maximum of 65 days. Let's say that we want password minimum age to be 1, so if a user changes his password, he cannot change the password for 24 hours. He has to wait 24 hours and then he can change it. And password minimum age, let's say that we want to set it for 3. And also, if you remember, we discussed about user ID for user accounts. Now these are the minimum and maximum values that are automatically selected for user add, and these should remain like this. Of course you can change them, that's perfectly fine, but the best practice and the Linux recommendation is to not change this. If you know for a fact that you are going to create simple user accounts, even if you give them root permissions, which we will do later on, you should not change this. I can change this because the minimum value is 2000, the maximum UID version is 60,000. So let's say that we want to change this to 2000. That's fine, as long as you don't go below 1000, that's fine. And the same goes for group IDs that are used by group add, but these are also created automatically with user add commands. So there are of course multiple options here, but I think it's enough to stay focused on that. And another option that you can change is to encrypt the method of setting up passwords. And here we have a small description of different ciphers that you can use. Now we are not going to go in depth into this, but if you want to change this, you can change it. So as soon as I change the password for another user account, this encryption will be taken into consideration for here. So if we go on top, we have different parameters, and here for login, for login.defs, we also have create home, and it's set to yes. And if this would have not been set to yes, whenever we would have used the command user add, we would have been forced to use the -m flag so that the home directory is created. Now in distribution like this, like Rocky 8 or 9 or Red Hat 8 or 9 or CentOS 8 or 9 or Fedora 8 or 9, you are not forced to do that because this is already set by default, unless This was changed by the administrator of the infrastructure where you are working on. But I think it's enough about login.defs. You should remember that login.def has, let's say, password. So login.defs has the required information for setting up max password days, minimum password days, and so on. So basically just controls the options that you have for your password. So if we cut again, we use pass as the keyword for grep. We see here that we have the values that we have changed, and let's also change and pipe for UID as well. So we set the passwords to be maximum 65 days with 1 day minimum password age between the password changes, and warning with 3 days. We also changed the UID for 2000 and the group ID as well. And I will do again tail on etc passwd, and let's do I think that's enough. So we have, as you can see here, Johnny was created with the user ID and group ID 1000, and it had a specific password age as well, which is this one, but we changed it. So actually let's check Matthew. Matthew is the best example. So these are the values that were inside etc login.defs right here, and we changed this. So now if I use if I create another account, and let's say that we create this account as CIP, I don't know, no name comes into my mind now. As soon as I create this, the account will be created. Let's tail again, and we have SIP here, and you see that it was created with the user ID 2000 and the group ID 2000 as well, and that's one thing. And if I create another account, let's say that we want to create more users, let's call them Lola, Lily, and Flora, because I don't know what other names, or actually my bad, have to create them individually. So let's create user Lola, Lily, and Flora. So as soon as we do a tail again, you will see that the first users were created with user IDs and group IDs from 1000. The next user IDs were created with user IDs and group IDs from 2000, because we changed that. And if I do a chage -l on Matthew again, we have for the password, we have the old values. And if I change the password now for, let's say, Lola, and let's add the password here, okay, and let's compare with chage the user Lola. You see, these are different now. So skel will show you the files that are going to be copied over into the home directory of the user account that you are going to create. And login.defs, let's actually go inside it as well one more time. So login.defs contains, it's the file that contains specific values that are going to be read by the command user add, and based on the things that you have here, you can create accounts with specific password validity options or specific user ID and so on. So that's what these two files are. They are actually very important, and that's one thing. Now, because we have discussed about the accounts and how to create them, let's also see how we can remove them. So I would like to delete the user accounts that I have for Kyle, CIP, Lola, Lily, and Flora. And we can use the command userdel. And let's have a quick look at the manual for userdel, because we have different options that we can use. So we have First of all, we could use the -f or force word to force the deletion of everything, and usually this is the most used one, or at least that's the one that I used when I had to deal with local accounts. We also have just the remove files, which basically files will represent that files in the user's home directory will be removed along with the home directory itself, and files located in other file system will have to be searched for and deleted manually. This is the only difference that we have. And we have different parameters as well. We can go through each and every single one, but I don't think this is the needed case now. For example, we have a script example which removes the user's cron and at print jobs and so on. So to not make this overly complicated, we can just use user del -f. That's more than enough. So for example, I would like to delete actually the user's CIP. And let's see, user del -f lola, and there we go. They are not, these users are not anymore. But you will see that, for example, we still have the home directory of user CIP and for user lola. So let's see why. Because we have not used a specific parameter, and maybe we don't know exactly what to search for. So in that case, we can search for specific words, and there we go. This is the parameter that we did not use. So if we would like to completely delete user accounts and remove their home directories as well, you can use a combination like fr. So user del -fr, and in our case, let's take the user, let's say Lily, and there we go. Now if I try to list again on home directory, we will see that we have the other home directories for the user accounts, including for CIP and lola, but we don't have anything for Lily. So what we can do, we can just rerun the other commands and add again user del -fr, and it will tell us that user del does not exist. So unfortunately, you cannot delete the files of user accounts with that command anymore. What you can do is use rm -rvf. So that would be for home SIP, and then let's also do the same for home lola. And there we go. We have removed all the directories for those users as well. And if you want to save yourself the trouble of having to manually remove the directories for those users, you can, for example, do something like this again. So if I would like to remove Andrew, Matthew, and Kyle, I can just use again user del -fi, and let's give the name of the user. In our case, I'm gonna actually remove just Flora. As soon as I do this, my bad, fr, not fi, my bad. So as soon as I do user del -fr Flora, we see that user Flora, it's not inside etc password anymore, and if we list on home, we don't have Flora in the home directory here anymore either. If you still want to create user accounts from the graphical user interface, you can simply go here on activities, show applications, and here you can click on settings, or you can simply search for the user keyword. So we have users here. Let's make this a bit bigger. And if we want to, let's say, create and manage user accounts from the graphical user interface, we have to first unlock this. So as soon as we click unlock, it will ask us for the root account password. I'm gonna hit that, and let's see what we are going to do. Let's see that we want to remove Andrew. I'm gonna remove Andrew, and we are going to delete files as well. And this is done. You can of course make users administrators. You can tick this, but your session needs to be restarted for the settings to take effect. I'm not gonna do that now because we are going to make Johnny administrator at a later date, which is in our next episode, where we will discuss about root permissions, how you can assign root permissions and so on. But for the time being, let's also remove this. But you see here, it's one thing that we notice a difference in our files, because if we go back in etc passwd, our HR chief it's Andrea, but HR chief it's a comment, it's not another user. So you see that inside the graphical user interface this appears somewhat wrongfully, so it's treated as another account, which is strange because it's not. So I'm going to remove this, and it will tell me if I want to remove HR chief's files as well. I'm gonna do that, but this is not a separate account. It was actually the account for the comment for Andrea, but for whatever reason it's treated like that. If I click on this line, I can edit the comment, or I can change the password as well, and the language and many more. But you see, it's telling us that it's HR recruiter, which is not, but it's treating it like that. And usually this is what's happening inside graphical user interfaces. It's foggy the way it shows, because we know for a fact that Andrea is an HR chief. This is the label. We can definitely see that in the terminal, but for whatever reason, on the graphical user interface, it shows up wrong. But if you remember, when we have created our account Johnny, we gave it the description or the comment Johnny. That's why on our graphical user interface Johnny appears as Johnny, because when you create user accounts from the graphical user interface, you have to add a comment that it's similar to the name itself. So that's why this appears like that. In reality, HR recruiter from here, it's actually our user Matthew, which is right here. So that's why I personally don't use the graphical user interface. But as I stated, if you want to, you can definitely do that. I'm going to remove John and Kyle as well. I'm going to delete their files as well, and let's see how it looks when we want to create a user account from the graphical user interface. Let's add the name here. I'm just going to add the user2 name. Let's set the password, and that's it. That's the only thing that we can use. I don't want to make it administrator, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And there we go. For whatever reason, it did not allow me to add the password twice. And one thing, because I set the password to be set at the next logon, I'm just gonna leave it as it is. But as you can see here, I did not have the option to add a comment. I can add a comment, but if I change this to, let's say, user22, it changed that. Let's see how it looks if I try to change to login with that account. So let's click on switch user, hit enter, and there we go. So you see, in the graphical user interface, the comment section, it's actually treated like the name itself, which it's a bit weird. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really hope this helped you. I hope that it was engaging, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. If you think that maybe I missed something and you wanted more things to be discussed in more depth, consider leaving a comment, reach out, and I'll make sure that I'll add that next time. So thank you again for watching. Have a good day and see you next time. Cheers.